In every life cycle, there is a beginning and an end. When this end eventually comes, for some, they move on to a new place, while for others, they remain left behind a crumbled shell of who they used to be. Why do some spirits stay behind, and why do they attack those still living? Here we explore, in the lore behind the undead Hollowmen. Way back, during the Age of Heroes, it was well known that certain areas of the land were off limits for those that could not defend themselves. Those documented were the marshes of Darkwood and the infamous Lynchfield Graveyard, for these areas had a high concentration of undead wandering around, attacking those that entered their domain. During this time, it was common that a place of death and malice bred the environment for the undead to thrive, reaching out to necropolis in the northern wastes where a whole town was massacred, and close to the execution tree where many prisoners of Bowerstone died. These areas were stained in negativity and pain. This pain became a magnet for the restless souls to be linked to the living plane without being able to move on. 4 variants of the undead were discovered during the Age of Heroes. The first being a standard undead skeleton. These are considered the weakest of the undead found, and are often easily defeated, but a traveller should be aware that although these are weak alone, when together with a horde of the same variant, even a skilled fighter would feel overwhelmed. The second variant explored is the Chieftain Undead. These stand much stronger than the weakest variant, and appear more capable of defending themselves. While these may be a threat to someone alone, they typically come with other members in waves until their victim is overpowered, never stopping until their foe is down. If the first 2 variants weren't bad enough, the variant dubbed as the Undead General are considered the most vicious found on the mainland. These stand tall with weapons and armour. While their appearance would be intimidating for any who glance their way, these generals have the ability to summon the weaker variants to fight for them. A truly terrifying experience for someone visiting the graveyard to see a loved one. While it is unknown how each undead member gains their status in the afterlife, it is believed by some that the standard simply were normal villagers, while the more powerful and aggressive variants had combat training and were buried in their fighting gear. In the Northern Wastes, the 4th variant was discovered. Wraiths have been documented to wander the lost city now known as Necropolis and the Archon Shrine. While limited to the Northern Wastes, these are the deadliest of all undead found in Albion during this age. Permanently frozen, these creatures wander with giant weapons to inflict devastating blows while also showing the ability to use the will ability Force Push. A notable member of the undead was Nostro. He was encountered by the hero of Oakvale due to being poisoned. Nostro's soul was held in unrest due to not dying a warrior's death, and so his soul was finally put at rest after the hero beat him in combat many years later. While the undead were a plague on the desecrated regions of Albion, the members of the Witchwood Arena still found a positive use for them, where they captured them and had heroes fight them for entertainment for the masses. Over the next 500 years, Albion changed. The Heroes Guild fell, the population expanded, and more towns popped up around the continent. With these changes, the dead also changed. While some believe dark magic to have been used, others believe this simply to be the evolution of another one of Albion's creatures. While those that had died simply came back in a skeletal frame during the Age of Heroes, now death had a new process. When a human died with unresolved issues, they would become a ghost. As a ghost, they had the ability to fix their issues and move on to a better place. While in this stage, the ghosts could freely transform into a wisp to navigate Albion in search of resolve. If a ghost were unable to resolve their issues, over time, their humanity would fade away, leaving them an angry wisp. As observed in various locations of Albion, these wisps would then gravitate to one location. Although stunning to look at a cluster of wisps, those may be fooled into thinking them harmless, simply floating orbs, but through the lack of humanity and unresolved issues, the wisps evolved to enter the remains of the dead and reanimate them to attack those around, simply reduced to a primal form of aggression and teamwork with others of their kind. With the undead problem known around Albion, one citizen of Bowerstone, Bartholomew Brigard, described the wisps inhabiting the skeletons of the dead as Hollowmen, and from that moment, the undead had a true name: Hollowmen. As similar with the undead of the Age of Heroes, the Hollowmen seemed to gravitate towards locations of significance. Within the Wellspring Cave of Oakfield, wisps guarded the cave from those attempting to perform the ritual of the Golden Oak. In the Tomb of Heroes in Bower Lake, the undead stood guard, ready to attack any that plundered the crypts. It seems to some that while they could not resolve their own purpose in death, they had simply found a new one. Where there was a body to inhabit and a purpose, the Hollowmen could rise. Documented from the fighters that came across the Hollowmen on their journey, it was noted that there were two variants during the Age of Enlightenment. The first variant appeared to fight with limited armour and with whatever weapon they could get their hands on. Those witnessed were sickles and small weaponry. While easy to fight one alone, the wisps were shown to inhabit their hosts at once, resulting in many of this basic variant swarming the victim. The second variant, dubbed the Elder Hollowmen, are shown to be much stronger, using ancient armour to defend themselves, and in some cases, wielding dual weaponry and showing the ability to cast the heroic abilities of shock and force push. Although much more capable in battle than their weaker variant, these appear to take a backseat role, preferring to watch a weaker horde swarm the target. When its host body is destroyed, it is unknown whether the wisp dies, or whether it just flies away looking for a new body. While fortunate to survive a swarm of these, it can still be terrifying to think that they could simply move on to another host body and fight again. After 50 years, now into the Age of Industry, the wisps were still noted to roam areas of significance. Within the secret reliquary under the town of Brightwall, Hollowmen waited, guarding a treasure left behind by the hero of Bower Lake. With Albion becoming a kingdom and with royal soldiers sent to secure locations, many of these soldiers died in wars, and so an abundance of corpses allowed the wisps to take over. It is presumed that the wisp were able to read the basic memories and actions of those they inhabited, as they gained the ability to wield guns and fire at victims. This was noted in the eerie Morningwood Fort, where many soldiers had died. With every soldier's death, a new Hollowman could rise, and so this became an endless battle to hold the fort from the undead, only made harder by the Hollowmen using the training of the soldiers to perform better in battle. The Hollowmen of this age were noted to fall into three categories. The first were simply the dead members of the royal army with the ability to shoot the living, run away from attacks and swarm their victims. The second were equipped with older armour and were much faster in combat than the standard variant. These also had the ability to cast the shock spell. These are thought by some to be the ancient warriors from centuries before. The third and most powerful variants of this age are the Hollow Commander, who, although rare, could destroy a foe unskilled in melee. Alongside their brutal attack, they are also able to block attacks, throw lightning, and summon a weaker variant to fight for them. The Hollow Legion at the Morningwood Fort almost lost their men to this variant, but were helped by a young hero with amazing abilities. While the undead of the Age of Heroes may have been fairly basic in terms of intelligence, the years have been kind to the undead, showing a gradual increase in learning capabilities and combat tactics. Outside of Albion's borders, it is said that there are many more variants of Hollowmen with impressive capabilities. Maybe one day, they will be at the same level as the living. With death still a natural part of a life cycle, Albion will only have to cope with the dead rising. I ask Hero, would you be brave enough to go up against a horde of Hollowmen, or would you run away, leaving them to attack another innocent soul? The theory. Jack of Blade's death changed how death worked. Here we'll be trying out something new where I'll take a theory about the Fable universe and try to attempt to make some sense of it using facts and lore from Albion. If you have any theories for future videos, let me know. Jack's death changed how the death structure worked. Okay, so this week I feel like I have a pretty good argument to make, and it will fill the gap between games on why the undead and Hollowmen act differently between them. After Jack dies, the concept of the undead changes from the dead simply rising in their own corpses, as seen by Nostro, who stays within his own form, to Fable 2, where floating wisps can reanimate the corpses of the dead around Albion. I personally prefer the wisps as it adds a darker dimension to Albion, as after you die, your body may be worn by an angry wisp just looking to kill something. Now, point 1. The change happens after Jack's death, and so this theory structures around this. His death was a significant factor between Fable and Fable 2, along with 500 years for things to change. Jack was an immensely powerful being from another dimension, and his death would have surely had some aftermath on the afterlife. He was ancient, and so being pulled through the netherworld and past the screamers that he had created may have had some sort of effect. With the screamers in mind, we'll move on to point 2. As Jack created the screamers, who were curse will users banished to the netherworld for eternal torment. These creatures mostly reside in the netherworld, and so Jack must have had some sort of power over that realm to keep them in there. Would it be too much for reach to believe that he either suppressed the ability for wisps to be formed, or he removed a ghost's ability to resolve their issues before being trapped in their own bodies, where they later reanimate themselves, but in a pure primal form? With Jack dead, his possible power over this realm would be removed, and so the ghosts would be able to leave their bodies and have the opportunity to resolve their issues before time runs out and they turn into the angry wisps that inhabit the Undead of Albion. Point 3. Although we didn't see wisps in Fable, we do know that they are essentially the souls of the dead in ghost or wisp form. Now, we know Jack isn't attached to the bodies he holds. His soul is held within his mask, and so whoever wears the mask is possessed by Jack. Jack is essentially a wisp himself, although he retains whatever sanity he has. When collecting hero souls, we absorb their souls into the mask to be transported to Archon Shrine. Therefore, they're not capable of entering a wisp form, but we can see a glimpse of it when they're pulled into the mask. We do see Scarlet's ghost, which I guess could be an exception to this rule, but maybe she was powerful enough to escape whatever magic Jack had in place. Now I think that this theory holds some merit in my eyes, and it's a great way to bridge the gap between the undead that we see in Fable and the Hollowmen we see in the later games. It gives us an actual reason instead of just knowing that the developers wanted to give the undead a redesign between games. In summary, Jack of Blade's death removed his power over the netherworld, resulting in the dead now having the ability to resolve their issues before becoming angry wisps. What do you think? Does this theory hold merit? At least it's better than the troll theory from last week. Personally, I'd like to think that this is what happened, although I guess with Fable, the beauty of the game is that you can fill the gaps with whatever is in your imagination. With the undead, this is my belief. Now hero, enjoy your day. Bye.